The United States plans to push ahead with talks with Russia aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. This after Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke on the phone with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Rubio is currently in Israel on a tour of the Middle East. He's due to travel on to Saudi Arabia, where reports say he'll start the talks with Russian negotiators. This news comes ahead of the last day of the Munich Security Conference, where key discussions centered on Ukraine and European security challenges. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy firmly rejected any idea of a peace deal coordinated without Ukraine and Europe's involvement, and warned against separating European and American security interests. He criticized U.S. President Trump's recent phone call with the Russian president that has left European leaders scrambling to be included in negotiations on ending the Ukraine war. And here's what NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte had to say at the conference on Saturday about Europe's task now.
To my European friends, I would say, get into the debate, not by complaining that you might yes or not be at the table, but by coming up with concrete proposals, ideas, ramp up the spending, make sure that the training and the weapon supplies continue, but also come up with concrete ideas what, for example, security guarantees could look like, and what Europe could. And I must say, since one day of complaining, what I've now been seeing on the European side of NATO is indeed that people are now getting into the concrete planning phase of what could that be.
DW's chief political editor, Michaela Küfner, is at the Munich Security Conference. Michaela, from what you are hearing in Munich, is there any more clarity about what specifically Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will be discussing in Saudi Arabia?
Well, one thing's for sure, the isolation of Russia is over. The United States, and there's a readout from an official in DC about this very meeting. That will be about Ukraine, but also about other pressing international issues. So clearly, there is a complete transition happening in real time and above the heads of the Europeans and Ukraine as this Munich Security Conference here was debating the next steps towards peace negotiations. That decision seems to have been taken already in that phone call that we saw last week between Donald Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin, and now they're filling in the details. And what we're hearing, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has not been asked to join that meeting as of right now, Sunday morning here Munich time, and neither have the Europeans. And that has really put them into a bit of a panic. We're expecting an emergency informal foreign ministers meeting by European foreign ministers here at the Munich Security Conference on that very issue as well. And just following on from the quote that you had by Mark Rutte, Keith Kellogg, who is the envoy on Ukraine for the United States, he said he suggests to European allies not to come into this whole debate about peace talks, complaining that they're not at the table, but instead they should make concrete proposals on what they can contribute, and he clearly means defense spending there.
You just referenced a meeting among Europeans to discuss all of this. What do we expect from those talks?
Well, we expect talks here on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, and as early as Monday, we have seen indications, and the Polish foreign minister has indicated that there could be an even higher level meeting in Paris, an emergency meeting, essentially to coordinate how Europe can ensure a seat at the table, or at least an input into that very issue of Ukraine and how to talk to Vladimir Putin ahead of that meeting potentially taking place in Saudi Arabia without them at the table. Quite clearly, this has rung alarm bells throughout European capitals, and it leaves a huge question mark on how much damage will have been done to the relationship with the Europeans here.
That is Michaela Küfner at the Munich Security Conference. Many, many thanks.
You're welcome.